Congratulations! You just reached 100,000 miles, 150, or even 200,000 miles on your vehicle.
Made it.
How's it going, guys? My name is Rami, and welcome back to another episode of RQ's Garage. We're gonna learn what maintenance things we need to do for our vehicles when we reach those huge milestones of 100,000, 150, 200,000, maybe even 250 or 300,000 miles. The older a vehicle is, the more mileage it accumulates and the more care we need to put into it to make sure it's running at optimal performance all the time. Now you might be saying, I do oil changes every couple months. I'm on top of my maintenance, easy peasy. Well, there's more to a vehicle's maintenance than just oil. You have a lot of different fluids and other components that you need to be more cautious about now that your vehicle has reached that high mileage state. So my car behind me, I got a 2007 Acura TL. I've reached 218,000 miles on this bad boy. Actually, I have 217,000 miles on my car. So I better be following my own tips. Give or take, almost reaching that 220, 230. And it's been treating me well. So I'm gonna pop up my hood and just show you what I'm talking about in terms of my vehicle specifically. All right, guys, this is my engine bay and my 2007 Acura TL. Now we have a lot of different plastics covering up the majority of the engine. So let's take all these off. Cool. Now we have a better view of what we're looking at in terms of the motor, all the components around it, and maybe even seeing some of those fluid reservoirs that we don't know too much about, but might need to be replaced in terms of fluid. So I'm just going off of my engine bay, but please feel free to use this as an example or a template for when you're looking at your car and your engine bay. Every engine bay will look a little different. Some auto manufacturers like Hondas and Acuras, Toyotas and Lexuses will have a similar layout. But in terms of every one, it's not going to be looking like this exactly. So we have our engine right here in front of us. We have some belts on the left-hand side, some reservoirs here. We all know the blue one is for windshield wiper fluid. Different lines, different support systems in the back, our air box. We have our battery up here. And let's start off with one of the most important fluids that needs to be replaced after you reach 100 or 200,000 miles. Antifreeze, your coolant. This is the solution that keeps the engine cool in terms of operating temperature. Right here is where our radiator is. Okay, so our radiator runs all the way back here. It's covered by some more plastics, but this is what our radiator is. And we have our extra tank right here for extra fluid. You can see I have some more right there. Coolant fluid is gonna depend on the automaker. Most of them are like a blue, a yellow, a lime green maybe. But once it reaches about 100,000 miles of fluid being pumped into the system and keeping the engine cool, the additives in the coolant tend to break down and they don't work as effectively. So again, I reached 200, I am over 200,000 miles, and I think it might be time for me to replace my coolant fluid once again, which a video will be coming soon myself. So we know for sure we need to do our coolant. That's important. It keeps the engine cool, it doesn't overheat and causes any problems on the road. Another extremely important fluid that needs to be changed around 100,000 miles is our transmission fluid. So we know this guy is going to be our engine oil fluid because it's on the engine itself. If we pull out the dipstick, we see that it's a good golden brown. I just got my oil replaced recently. That's okay. But we should see something similar to this guy, and it might be a different color, it might be the same color, but we need to look at a different dipstick in the engine. And right here, down here, it's gonna be the transmission fluid. Now again, my transmission's dipstick is lower, yours might be somewhere else, but they're always gonna be kind of out of the way in terms of catching your eye right away. It's gonna be deeper down in the engine bay, might be in the back or so, because they don't want you confusing the oil dipstick with the transmission dipstick. But the transmission fluid is essential to keeping your transmission gears nice and lubricated. And after a long time of constantly switching gears and reverse and drive and the first gear, second gear, fifth gear, newer cars have up to 10 gears. It's important to change the transmission fluid. Transmission fluid 8 times out of 10 is going to be a red fluid, but it could vary, of course. It's not always going to be red. But a transmission fluid is extremely important to making sure that the transmission of the engine keeps lubricated and those gears stay lubricated. But just keep in mind, transmission fluid, coolant are top two in terms of 100,000, 200,000 mile maintenance. All right, so we're still looking here, and we see, boom, we see another reservoir down there. That guy is our power steering fluid. Most, if not all, vehicles today have electronic power steering or hydraulic power steering. And that means whenever you turn the wheel, it's really easy to turn the wheel right and turn the wheel left because of this awesome fluid that makes it easy for us to turn our wheel. So power steering fluid should always be a golden brown, give or take. Again, everyone's going to be different, but power steering fluid is definitely a fluid that would need to be replaced if you're having power steering problems. And you don't need to necessarily replace this fluid at 100,000 miles, but again, the older the vehicle is, the older the fluids are, the additives will tend to deteriorate and they won't work as easily. So it's important to keep that guy in mind too. Not extremely essential, but very important nonetheless. Now we have this blue reservoir. We all know this is the windshield wiper fluid. That stuff is cake. You can buy it $2-3 at AutoZone. You can buy it on Amazon. You can go to Walmart. That doesn't need to be replaced. We all know once this guy gets empty, we'll just put more fluid for our windshield wipers. That's easy. But we move around, we don't see any more reservoirs. Things look okay, except for ba-boom, we see one back here. And this guy is our brake fluid reservoir. Every vehicle, whether it's gas or electric, will have brake fluid. Brake fluid is hydraulic fluid that gets pushed through the brake lines to make sure your car brakes in an appropriate manner. This is what's pushing the brake pads onto the rotors, so that hydraulic fluid is extremely important in terms of braking power. Brake fluid needs to be replaced, ideally more often than not. I know, for example, my vehicle calls out every 50,000 miles, new brake fluid should be in here. And brake fluid, again, is extremely hygroscopic, so over time, it might dilute into water, and we don't want that to happen. So it's important to make this guy a hydraulic fluid and not a water-soluble fluid. So brake fluid, once you reach 100,000, if not 200,000, definitely needs to be replaced. And other maintenance items when you reach 100,000 miles or 200,000 miles. You might need a new battery. Battery's charge will die over time, and it might need to be replaced. I replaced mine about 6 months ago or so when I reached around 200,000 miles, so I got pretty, on the money there. Your air intake filter. In this box right here, we have an air intake filter that filters out all the crud in the air to push it into the engine. That guy needs to be replaced, but that happens more often than you'd think at oil changes. We have hoses, kind of inspecting hoses, making sure that there's no cracks in the rubber. It's gonna get old, it's gonna get cruddy. That's what happens when you're driving so much. My luck, I had to replace my alternator. I was driving home from Michigan, my car died, I had no means of bringing it home, towed it to a mechanic shop, and you can tell that that is a brand new alternator on my TL. So that might happen to you depending on your maintenance as well. So keep that in mind. Some of the belts are extremely crucial in terms of making a vehicle run. This is my serpentine belt. Belts over time will crack, they'll squeak. You don't want a belt to break, of course. So belts definitely have a shelf life on them as well. We have our timing belt inside there in this cover back here and in this cover up here, but that guy's replaced. So in terms of different pumps in the vehicle, whether you have, your power steering pump, your water pump, pumps don't necessarily need to be replaced unless you have major maintenance items like a timing chain, for example, or a timing belt. Your coils and your spark plugs. Having a V6, I have 1, 2, 3, and I have 3 more in the back, 4, 5, 6. Those guys need to be replaced every 100,000 miles or so. But in terms of extreme maintenance, we're talking fluids. We're talking coolant fluid, we're talking transmission fluid, we're talking power steering, and our hydraulic brake fluid. Engine oil should be replaced, every couple months or so, we know that. But these ideally are the main items that need to be changed when you're reaching 100,000, 150, 200,000 plus miles. So When you're working at 100,000, 150, or 200,000 miles, make sure you're looking at your fluids, make sure you're looking at your battery, any mechanical components too, so the axles, your brake system might need new brakes, new rotors, your tires might need to be replaced. All those things are relatively manageable. You might need to go to the shop for some of those items, but most of these items you can do at home, just as long as you have the proper tools and the proper guidance to teach you. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. Tell me, what mileage do you have on your vehicle? Are you getting close to 100,000 miles? Are you as low as 50,000 miles? Let me know where you're at, guys. Smash that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and go hit me up on Instagram. My Instagram is kind of small, but I'm trying to make it grow. I'll have a link down in the description below. But I'm Rami, this is Arky's Garage, and I love you.